group living everywhere, and then or having the option to either atomize and sort of be an individual, or kind of self-determine in their different groups. So I'm curious, why are you okay with ethnic or religious or identity, cultural self-determination on the neighborhood level, but there's something on the indigenous sort of national polity level, you seem to have a problem with it? That's an inconsistency that I never really understood. So I'm curious, like, what makes the ethnic neighborhood an okay thing, but what makes the ethnic country or the ethnic city-state a bad thing, the polity?
Well, I'm basically surrendered to Hashem and to my understanding of Torah, and the prophecies are pretty blatantly globalist. I mean, it's going to be a
everyone gets enslaved and to the Jew.
In the same region, that doesn't mean that we're all blended together in the same region. Also, everyone can submit. You can have sort of a perennialist approach to that, where Jews are a light unto the nations, and they show all the nations how to be a moral nation, how to worship God, the right God, even, and how to self-determine how to behave as a nation. Jews can do that from our own indigenous land, and also we can.
But it's not us; it's God. I'm saying that's the.
I know. And there's nothing in the Bible that says everyone's going to mix up together like it was in the Tower of Babel times, and we're going to have a bunch of multi-ethnic neighborhoods with Jews presiding over it all as a managerial caste.
I agree.
So what it
that's
says
why
is open to interpretation, and you have your interpretation, and others have their interpretation. Meir Kahane interprets it as a nationalist, effectively a nationalist faith, where we can show how to be a nation from our own land. And the end time prophecy is globalist in the sense of this perennial globalism where everyone is in their own nation worshiping God in their own way. But there's that
any biblical. I mean, so you don't. I'll let you say what you're right.
Saying. No, I'm not going on a rant. I'm done. I'm just trying to address my points.
Any biblical explanation is going to say, yes, these are paradoxes and impossible. However, due to the power of God, it's possible to have like this global order and nationalism at the same time. So logically, you're going to say that they conflict and they're not possible.
No, they don't conflict. There is a way to have both, and that's this sort of perennialist vision, even all worshiping the quote-unquote same God or the same higher power. This is possible to have this sort of perennialist interpretation where everyone all self-determines and has their own countries that reflect their own polities, rather, that reflect their own attributes and their own traditions, and worship God in their own way. So it can be this universal brotherhood of man, but I don't understand why the universal brotherhood of man requires all of humanity to be mashed up together and superimposed upon each other. There's nothing that logically that connects that to the universal brotherhood of man necessarily, and it's perfectly possible to have this sort of globalistic end time prophecy where we're all worshiping God, and Jews even are the exemplar in how to worship God, how to be a moral nation, but everyone's living in their own polity, everyone's expressing themselves in the manner of their own indigenous culture, and we don't all even have to be an ethnic neighborhood superimposed on top of each other. We can simply have our own polities, as we always have really in our indigenous lands. I mean, look at most of human history.
Yeah, comparative eschatology is very difficult in saying what's going to happen at the end of the days. We know a lot of the predictions, and we could argue about how we're going to get there. But no, we're not going to be able to predict what the end of days is going to look like. We could argue ad infinitum. And that's how I opened the show, and I'm getting pressure from people I go to shul with. Like this whole conversation show, it's just a waste of time. Just study Torah, just do the mitzvahs, and kind of like a surrender to God. So secular Jews usually have a more proactive approach, as where Pharisees usually have a more hands-off God's approach, where all I have to do is do the rituals properly and God will take care of the rest. And you could rephrase the same picture that people who don't believe that the hands-off approach take a more hands-on approach, which is how the secular Jews do it through social justice, or even, God forbid, through promoting sin and bad behavior.
Do that? How were they?
And that was collectively like our American society today.
It wasn't that they were multicultural. Multiculturalism was the punishment. What they were doing wrong is they were building tower to heaven.
No, they were trying to be multicultural, and that's why it failed. And it all
multiculturalism. Norman's
right.
Multiculturalism
was the punishment. They were scattered.
No. The punishment was how everything was for thousands of years, where people were in their separate nations.
You were saying that's the result, separate nations, and the fact that there's different nations and people that we have to worry about these issues is because of the Tower of Babel. And the Tower of Babel that says that humanity was united against God, because humanity, although we were united, we didn't want to submit to a
We
higher
are
force.
united against. We
So
are
all
united
of
against
all
God.
of humanity united against God, and you could say the situation in
but
America
do
is
it.
basically the same.
But David, those people in Babylon, like they were worshiping themselves.
Their own religion.
I'm talking about the Old Testament. So they were defying God in the story by building this tower that was like a symbol of themselves and like
According to the verse, the
their
purpose
big
of the
egos.
tower
Their
was to
big
wage war
egos.
with God. Just to make it clear, the purpose of the tower, according to the sage's interpretation and possibly the direct understanding of the verse, was to wage war against God, that we actually wanted to kill God. And the purpose of the tower was to get to the heavens so that metaphorically, God forbid, we could kill God.
Right. And that's horrible.
And that's why
all
we
the
were
people in the
punished
world
with.
united to do it.
I was saying, according to the Bible, that's the explanation for our current state of affairs and why we're having all these questions about identitarianism. That's the Bible's explanation. Obviously, Jews seem to rise and fall together with empires. And as one empire falls, and God forbid, the Jews usually take very harsh punishment when the empire falls. But at the same time, the Jews are moving on to the next empire and going to be part.
Well, yeah, because they're the ones setting up the Ponzi scheme to make it fall and make it rise. Well, we don't even have to go that far. Even if you look within recent history, it's the same thing. It's nothing. That's the pattern that you recognize, and that's what leads people to the JQ, is the recognizing patterns. And so this is something that's admitted within Jewish circles. But then if you question the JQ, if you say, hey, this is what Jews are doing, well, then you get called out as anti-Semitic. So clearly, even our language and the way we communicate with each other is controlled by Jews. So that's the issue.
Back to what you said about the cycles, looking at even near our recent history and identifying patterns, right? David was proposing the idea that these cycles are just of the will of God, that man, Jew or otherwise, has no say in it. But that's obviously absurd. These cycles, when you look at the what you're talking about, the Ponzi schemes, when you look at the banking schemes and the Jews.
So you have to ask all the goyim on this panel a question, which is, where would you, what could you possibly do? Where would you possibly be without interest?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, it's funny because the first thing that I studied when I got into politics was banking, and if you look at the modern banking system, it all derives from the British bank, the British Central Bank, which was set up, I'm sure most of us know the story of the Rothschilds and how Amschel Rothschild sent his 5 brothers to the 5 different countries. And the entire, for example, the American Federal Reserve System is based upon the British Central Bank, which was the first private central bank to be established, where, this is partly where the entire debt money system came from. And I would be much better off if we were not under a interest, debt money system, which is an entirely Jewish creation.
Yeah, I'm against debt. We don't need it. National Socialist Germany proved that.
Actually, it's kind of funny that Brundle's wife went to see Hamilton because I hate Hamilton, and I got a funny story about him. But Hamilton has a famous quote that he said that a national debt is a national blessing, and but I'd like to think that I got the last laugh, seeing as how much I hate that kind of idea, because Hamilton was killed in the duel, right? And
Aaron Burr, man.
Yeah, he got in this duel on July 11th, and then he suffered all throughout the night, and he didn't die until July 12th. And July 12th is my birthday, so I get a really great birthday present every year to know that Hamilton died on my birthday.
That's really fun. Wait, was it Hamilton that Jackson ran against?
I don't remember, but I do I do know that Jackson, you know, obviously he ran on the platform of Jackson and no bank. You know, Jackson.
Yeah, I still say that to this day. I still say Jackson and no banks. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've heard about how there used to be in England, there used to be a tally system where they had like little,
yeah,
they had little sticks where they would create grooves, and
pieces of wood, just like driftwood, basically.
Yeah, basically, and all of the debts would be paid off with no interest.
Yeah.
So you'd have a debt, and the debt would be based on the little markings on your tally stick. And yeah, you could easily pay back debts and, you know, engage in trade and all this other good stuff. And it wasn't a really big deal. And you never had to get buried in freaking interest or usury because it was just a direct thing. So it was apparently it worked out quite well. And
yeah, actually, the greatest extent of the British Empire rose under the tally stick system.
Yeah, so it's the way that I think about it is no, usury is evil because you're literally saying I want something for nothing. On an energetic level, that's always going to be evil.
Yeah, and the very first shares that were sold under the British private bank were bought with tally sticks. So imagine if you bought shares in the central bank, you know, back in the day. You would be quite rich today, and you got it all with a freaking piece of wood.
One wonders who bought those shares.
Oh yeah, well, I don't think we need to wonder too hard.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen this, but they've done studies where you know how what a random number generator, right, is, where it's just a machine that sits there and creates like an endless continuous sequence.
Are you going to talk about the human mind influencing it? Yeah, there's a whole kind of, I guess, for lack of a better term, kind of pseudoscientific institute, but that does have some valid stuff there, like the Noetic Institute or whatever it's called online. Yeah, and there is some interesting research aggregated there. Yeah, human mind ability to influence random number counters, as well as
plants.
What was it? Double slit? What is it called? Double slit experimentation? Someone was explaining this to me in depth recently, and I'm not a particularly STEMmy or physics guy, but someone was explaining double slit experiment to me and how it effectively pokes some holes in some of the materialist, I guess, atheistic, quote unquote, modern conception of reality. But go back to you, sir.
But it's only one hole poke. My favorite two hole pokes are molecular biology and also the Cambrian explosion. No atheist or evolutionist can account for those.